I went to a yard yesterday and the homeowner knew something was off. The neighbor's yard looked green. Her yard had very few weeds in it, but it just didn't have a whole lot of color. And I know I've talked a lot about weed control on my YouTube channel, but I thought, you know, it might be appropriate to talk about fertilizer. And in this video, I want to give you some of the specifics that hopefully you've been looking for. Try to explain this on a level that most people would be able to understand. So we're going to show you some different type of fertilizers. I want to give you some information to maybe help you understand when to put the fertilizer out and how much to put out, and so that you know what you're doing and you're just not guessing at it. Today's video is sponsored by Backslope. Say, Jason, what's Backslope? This is my new Backslope machine. I purchased this a few months ago and have put some hours on. I think I got about 17 hours on it. Similar to a lot of ride-on fertilizer spreaders, some of the smaller ones, but in my opinion, it is improved in some ways. One of the main things I like is a little bit faster than some of the smaller machines I've used in the past. Also like that it has this open frame to it, that a little bit easier to access the maintenance and also easier to blow the fertilizer off at the end of the day, which is nice. It's also got the tanks on the side here, which helps with the stability. So this thing is excellent on hills, which is something that I deal with regularly. So just want to introduce you to a new machine that you might not be familiar with. This is the Backslope Pursuit 120. All right, so let's talk a minute about fertilizer. This is the fertilizer I've been putting out. This is, I buy from a company called Harrell's, I'll just show it to you, Harrells. And I apologize for all the shadows, but I'm starting to get some decent color on my Bermuda grass. I just mowed it yesterday. Oh, mistake here, tire track. Hey, it's harder than it looks sometimes. As I hear mowing, it's practically dark, and there was, in this hill, it could be rough. So getting some color on the Bermuda, except for the parts where I scalp it. All right, so I've got a couple of different fertilizer blends back here. This is an 1819 blend, and that is a 3807, I believe. So let me just talk to you a little bit about the numbers on the bag. Let's start there. So you see the three numbers on the bag. Most people are familiar with that, but those stands for your NPK, or your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and your potassium. So what do the three numbers represent? They represent the percentage of each of those in the bag. So look here, you got total nitrogen, and this tells you what makes up the nitrogen, and it's 18%. Thus you got an 18. Available phosphate, 1%. And then the potash, which is usually the form I understand that the potassium comes in, is 9%. So you got 18% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, 9% potassium, NPK. Now let me try to explain this on the level that I understand it, and some of you that are watching the video probably understand it better than I do, so feel free to leave a comment and others can read the comments to maybe get a better explanation. But the nitrogen is the one that oftentimes people want a high nitrogen fertilizer depending on what grass type, but that's the one that's going to give you that green color and make the grass grow. Okay, so I looked at this yard yesterday, and this lady calls, and she actually sent her soil off for a soil sample to the local university. They come back and they say it's low on nitrogen. Now, I didn't necessarily need a soil sample to tell me that. You could just look at it and say your neighbor's yard's green, yours is brown. And it's in almost summertime. The weather's warm enough for Bermuda grass to grow as a Bermuda grass lawn. So they told her, hey, you need nitrogen on the lawn. Now the phosphorus, the middle number, my understanding is that helps the root development of the plant. Now a lot of times you'll see on these fertilizers like this has 1%, some of them have 0 in it. I think there's some environmental concerns about runoff with that, and I think there's an understanding that a lot of times the phosphorus can stay in the ground for a long time. Again, somebody can correct me on that if I'm wrong. The potassium, I think potassium seems to affect just the overall plant health. So you see this has got 9% potassium. I don't want to give a more thorough explanation to that, but that's the level that I understand. Again, others could probably explain it on a better level. But let's talk about the nitrogen, and a lot of times people want to know, you know, how much fertilizer do I put on the lawn? Well, let me just give you a couple of examples, again, working off of these. This 1819 blend and the 3807 blend, which is what we're looking at here. So one of them is 18% nitrogen, the other is 38% nitrogen. So without being some kind of lawn care expert, you could figure out that you're probably gonna have to put more than double of this out to get the same results as you would on the other one. Back to the example of the conversation I had yesterday. The lady sends off her soil to get a soil sample. They come back and they tell her that she needs, I think, 6 pounds of a 15-0-15 fertilizer. Well, that sounds reasonable. I tried to explain to her and she was very understanding. I said, well, you know, here's kind of the negative with that. I mean, I didn't use all this information to her. I just told her I was using a higher nitrogen fertilizer. It was a slow release fertilizer I thought was going to be better for the lawn. But here's why. Why would I not just go dump 6 pounds of a 15-0-15 fertilizer on a particular lawn? Think about that. Let's just say, again, we'll use a kind of old illustration of drinking from a fire hydrant. Let's say you've been out all day doing something and you're basically dehydrated and you need a lot of water. Let's say that it's recommended that you drink 80 ounces of water. Now, if somebody fills up a gallon jug with 80 ounces of water, a gallon's more than 80 ounces, I realize that, and they just turn it over and dump it in and say, you need this bad, this is gonna get you hydrated. You know, it's probably not all gonna end up in your mouth, for one, and I'm not sure you're gonna be able to handle that amount of liquid that fast. And that's kind of an illustration that you could use, think about with fertilizer. If I go dump a bunch of fast release fertilizer on the lawn, is it gonna benefit it? Well, yes. I mean, that water, the amount of water you got in your mouth would benefit you, but you understand this, that the grass can only use so much of the nutrients at a given time. It can't take it all in at one time. And so what ends up happening is you end up wasting a lot of the nutrients. Do you get a little bit of a green up? Yes. But is a lot of it wasted? Yes. And with that quick release fertilizer, you know, it's gonna last, you know, for several weeks, but then it's gonna fade out because all that nutrients came at the beginning, or you know, didn't last very long, and then it started fading off. So that's why in a situation like this, I use a slow release fertilizer. So you can look at this bag here and you've got the white pellets, I believe, are a fast release fertilizer, and those teal colored ones are a slow release fertilizer. Now, I've explained this before, but the illustration that was shared with me about this slow release fertilizer, how does it work? Think of a tea bag being put in cold water. You're gonna make tea the old fashioned way, not just buy it at the grocery store, but you're gonna put the tea bag in there, and if it's in cold water, it's really not releasing much of the tea into the water. But as the water warms up, you turn the stove on, then it starts releasing. And that's the way this slow release fertilizer works. It's holding the nutrients in there, and it's got this polymer coating on it, and as the weather warms and we get rain, it starts releasing the nutrients. And depending on how thick the coating is on the fertilizer and how warm it is and how much you put out, if you do a higher rate, then it's gonna feed that lawn for a period of time. So you see, I can actually put out a slow release fertilizer one time early in the year and have it last the entire growing season, you know, or I can put out a lesser amount and have it last for 3 months and then come back and put some more out. So where again, you just can't do that with a quick release fertilizer. I don't believe that you're gonna be able to do that with liquid fertilizer as well. But think about this. So the other thing you need to understand is the growing season of your grass. Now, I don't want to put this out when the grass is dormant because it's just sitting there. Now, with the slow release fertilizer, it allows me to actually cheat a little bit, and I can put it out when it's dormant because, again, think about the tea bag illustration. If it's cold weather, grass is dormant, and I'm talking warm season grasses here, I'm in Alabama, I put it out there, it's just basically sitting there, releasing very little nutrients. And then as it warms, which also is the time the grass is gonna need the nutrients, then it starts releasing. So it is great for that situation. I put a cool seat. What if I put a quick release fertilizer out when it's cool weather and it rains on it? I basically wasted the whole thing because the grass is not ready to use it and the nutrients is gone by the time that it needs it. So the growing season's very important. When does the grass actually need the nutrients? So let's talk about cool season versus warm season in that situation. A warm season lawn, it's kind of starting to crank up a little bit in the springtime, and then it really likes the hot weather. With rain and hot weather, that's when our warm season grasses take off. So I want to fertilize it in the spring and let it go all the way, you know, to September, October in my area. Now again, I could do that one time with a heavy dose of a slow release fertilizer. I could do it twice, which is what I've been doing on a lot of my yards. I've been putting out fertilizer, you know, late February into March, again with a slow release, not the quick release, and then come back and fertilize it again in June to carry me through the rest of the way. And you could do it, fertilize 5 or 6 times on a Bermuda lawn. If I want to put 5 or 6 times out of a quick release fertilizer and just kind of give it a month's worth each time, you can do that as well. That's a lot more work than just using a quality slow release 1 time or 2 times. Now the next thing we want to know is what kind of grass you have and how much fertilizer does each grass need. And you could probably do a little bit of research, but just to give you an idea of what I'm doing, on a zoysia lawn, I'm using about 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. I'm going to tell you how we can figure out how much to put out on the yard. On a centipede or St. Augustine yard, I'm using about 1.8 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet over the calendar year. And on a Bermuda yard, I'm using significantly more than that. You could use a lot more if you don't mind mowing the grass. You want to use 4 or 5 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. I think it could probably handle that, again, in a slow release form, but you're going to be mowing quite often. So what does that look like in real life? Well, here's what we're going to do. This is a 50-pound bag, and this is the part that's going to help you as far as knowing how much to put out. This is a 50-pound bag, and we've already concluded that it's 18% nitrogen. So if you just take that first number and cut it in half or divide by 2, you're going to get 9. That means there is 9 pounds of nitrogen in this 50-pound bag, okay? It's 18% nitrogen. If it was a 100-pound bag, it would be 18 pounds, but it's only a 50-pound bag, so there's only 9 pounds. There's 9 pounds of nitrogen in this bag. Now, we already said on a centipede St. Augustine lawn, and this is what I use for my centipede and St. Augustine lawns, then I'm going to put out no more than 2 pounds of nitrogen per calendar year, I believe is kind of the rule of thumb. So I'm going for somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.9 pounds per 1,000 square feet twice per year, 0.85 pounds per application. I'm doing that twice per year. So I can put this out in late April, early May, and then come back and do it again in July. If I do that 2 times, it's going to last a couple months with this fertilizer. This is a combination of, this is not all slow release fertilizer. So I can get 2 months out of this, an 8-week fertilizer, and 9 pounds, and there's 9 pounds in the bag. So let's just say that I put my spreader and I set it where it spreads a bag of fertilizer for every 10,000 square feet for easy math. If there's 9 pounds in the bag and the whole bag covers 10,000 square feet, then I just used 0.9 pounds per 1,000 square feet. That's pretty easy math. So if I do that twice a year, I'm at 1.8 pounds for the calendar year. The rule of thumb is stay under 2 pounds of nitrogen per calendar year on a centipede St. Augustine lawn. Now, what about if I was using this bag with a 38% nitrogen? If I did the same thing and put a bag out for every 10,000 square feet, you're going to divide that number by 2. This bag has 19 pounds of nitrogen in it. So if I use a bag for 10,000 square feet, I'm going to be putting out 1.9 pounds of nitrogen for every 1,000 square feet. Now, in a Bermuda yard, I can do that. I can put this out, you know, 1 time in the spring and then come back, put it out again, or a similar blend. I got different blends, but you get the point. If I put this out and then 3 months later come put it out again, then it's going to keep the nitrogen feeding to that lawn. Now, I could use one that had a thicker polymer coating on it and again put out at a heavier rate, and it will actually feed the lawn for the entire year. But for me personally, I've been using a similar blend to this. I've been putting out a 3808 blend in late February into March, and then come back in June and put out the 3807. A little bit different coating on both of those, but it does 2 things. One, my Bermuda lawns are greener faster early in the year because I'm putting it out earlier, and then I'm able to keep them green all the way until September, even in October, depending on the weather. Now, maybe that was a lot of information to take in, but think about with your cool season lawns, a little bit different growing season there. They're gonna really spike in the springtime, and so that's when you wanna feed them then. Again, I'm not a cool season grass expert, but I would think during the summer, maybe not as important. The grasses are just kind of hanging in there. So you need to feed it in the spring when it's growing, and possibly that could help it survive the warmer temperatures and drier weather during the summer. And then again in the fall, I've heard people that'll feed their lawn in the fall to help it through the winter and also help it get a boost going the following spring. So there's a couple ways to do it, but the idea here is you want to feed it when the grass needs the food, okay? So when it's growing, Our warm season grass is gonna grow a lot through the summer. Cool season grasses have a big wave in the spring, not so much in the summer, and then the fall they start growing again. I'll put a link to another product you could use if you wanted to. I use this little chest mounted spreader a lot. I think these things are less than $100 on Amazon, and it is great for a small yard or a hilly yard you can't get a machine on. If I just had my own personal yard, it was small, I'd probably use one of these over a push spreader. They spread great, and they're good for like other things I use it for, putting out stuff in flower beds and things like that. A ride-on machine, you know, there's a lot of different ones. I got a Z-Spray, I got this back slope, which is great on hills. And a lot of them come with a little side deflector. So what I'll do is I'll make a perimeter pass around the property with the side deflector down. That keeps me from throwing it out in the street and in the flower beds. And then I can go back and forth after that with the side deflector up. You want to make nice, even passes. It's going to overlap a little bit when you're spreading it out, okay? So I'm not going to just, it's going to be a little thin on the edges, so there's going to be a little overlap. Basically, I'm trying to throw the fertilizer to the inside tire track. That's the way I typically do it. It gives me a nice, even pattern by doing that. If it's not even, then oftentimes you're going to have dark stripe, light stripe, dark stripe, light stripe. And not just because of the shadows. I'm talking in real life, and I've definitely done that before. If that happens, you can go put some fertilizer back in the light stripes areas to try to even it out, but it's usually a pain. I certainly didn't explain everything about fertilizer. I'm hoping I didn't confuse you more than help you, and hopefully you got an idea of when to fertilize, understand the different types of fertilizer, what the NPK means, and when to put it out and how to calculate how much to put it out. You might could do a quick search on Google of how much fertilizer your particular grass type needs. And then again, understanding, am I putting out a slow release fertilizer, fast release fertilizer? How long is my fertilizer gonna last? Do I wanna do multiple applications, one application? You know, all those things factor into how much to put on the lawn, but I'm hoping this video helped you more than confused you. Leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. If you want to get in weed control and fertilization like me, go to lawncarelife.com. That's where you'll find information like the Weed Control and Fertilization Academy. There's a video course, there's pricing charts, there's a mosquito spraying course, there's a course for those who want to get into lawn mowing. It's also information about the Lawn Care Life Conference, which is an event we've been putting on that has been excellent, and we are planning to do it again in February. Or hang around, watch some more videos. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.